I gotta comment on this comment because when I was young, I used to think that when people called me a cracker, okay, that it was because I was like the color of. But let me clarify something. First of all, my name is Joyful Girl. You can find me at Joyful Girl 96. And the word cracker does not mean because you're the color of a cracker. The word cracker literally comes from slavery times, which was discussing the slave masters cracking their whips. That's why they call you a cracker. Okay? That's why. And when we say they, it's really the wrong term because we are each other. We are each other. Another term that most people don't understand is actually a racist term, and it really should be removed from all of our vocabulary, is the word redneck. You see, other people, they actually describe themselves as rednecks. I actually had bosses at a company that I work for. Is a billion-trillion-dollar company. One of the bosses called himself a redneck all the time. Now, redneck does not mean that you're just outside and your neck is red, like a lot of people try to, muddle the meanings down. Redneck literally comes from the fact that when the masters, or let's just say the people that were hired by the plantation owners to control the slave population, those people, when they would actually hurt people that they owned, or they were managing, if you would, their necks would turn red while they were cracking their whips. So when you say they, and you say y'all, okay, you see, I just got to understand, like, I want to understand why you think it's okay to tit for tat. Why do you want to compare suffering when you haven't, likely, most people who claim that they're white, which was actually a government-issued identification, okay? Because in mi familia, I've got multitudes of races. Not only do they sit at the table with me, but at the same time, race is a construct. The OMB categories of race is 100% a lie, okay? 100% a lie. That's why I learned to speak 61 languages. That's why I learned with the land that I'm standing on. The land that I'm standing on and speaking to you today is the land of the Pokagon Band Potawatomi, the Weed, the Kickapoo, the Little Lenape, known as the Delaware, and also the Miami tribes, but also the Shawnee and the Muscoutin people who were, erased essentially from all areas of this land. The same state now is called Indiana, okay? But in their languages, and actually one of mine, is Bozo, Baju, He, and Ho. And also from other languages that are in my genetics. Borada. Salatamo, como va. Learn to speak more languages. Sit with your ancestors. I will guarantee you that when you actually do the paperwork and you sit down with this history and you think about what you're saying to compare, you're comparing instead of listening. You're in a defensive posture. What do you think it's going to take to get you out of that defensive posture to discuss what we need for healing across native land? This is all native land that we're on. And then across the entire globe, which across the entire globe were global indigenous people. Every single land had indigenous tribes. I'll never understand why anyone thinks that this comment is acceptable. They, them, you forgot that we are each other. You've also not read the ICCPR treaty, which literally outlines that we are responsible and accountable to create safety in our communities, to the communities to which we belong, even if we don't belong to them, to uphold human rights for each person multilaterally, inalienably. Okay? And you can go to the United Nations, you can go to their website, and you can read about the ICCPR treaty and all the other human rights instruments, which are binding laws. And then when you look at the Constitution of the United States, which itself is a treaty, just by the way, because a convention is a treaty, look up the Constitution where it says Article 6, Section 2. It's called the Supremacy Law. And it literally states that any treaty that the United States enters into is federal and state law. Whenever there's conflicts of law, another treaty is supposed to overwrite those. Every state and federal law is supposed to abide by international law, because without international law, there is no Constitution, there are no borders, there are no other treaties. So it's interesting that you came back with this comment. I'd like to know what you think of what I've just said after you sit with it for a while. We cannot create a meaningful dialogue with comments like this if we're in a defensive posture. We have to understand all the ancestries inside of us to then be able to sit down and talk with emotional intelligence about what's happened. Because politics, first of all, means, it really means, when you look up the etymology, I love language, I love words, I love history, and I've studied the church all the way back to pre-Rome, including the doctrine of discovery, all the way back to, Constantine's fraudulent, it's a well-known fraudulent fraud of the donation of Constantine, because, a person can't be in the ground 400 years and then all of a sudden wake up and start signing things over to people. Politics literally means the affairs of the citizenry. I find it very interesting how you came back with that. I hope that you learned something today, and I look forward to creating more meaningful dialogue with more folks who want to know more, want to do more meaningful things, then come back with comments like this and compare and suffering, because it's not going to get us anywhere. We need to invite people to the table. We need to invite meaningful dialogue and know thyself. That way we can remember the heartbeat of Mother Earth again. So, Yahweh.